This American Life. Today's show is a rerun. Act 1, The Fat Blue Line. We begin today with a story about something that happens all the time in all kinds of places, something that is so common that it's not even big enough to make it on the local news. Richard Price tells the story, the novelist and screenwriter. He often writes about cops and crime. He wrote Clockers. He wrote Sea of Love. He wrote for the TV show The Wire. He told this story on stage at the Moth in New York back in 2008. He describes it as a tale taken from real life and dramatized.
In the last novel I wrote, I spent a lot of time on the Lower East Side. And as is my wont, I wound up in the back of police cars a lot. And Lower East Side is a very low crime area right now. It used to be the worst, but Giuliani and real estate pressure took care of that. And now they basically have nothing to do down there in terms of crime. So what they do is they sort of sit in fake taxis, four beefy white guys, sit in a fake taxi by the side of the Williamsburg Bridge, and they eyeball what's coming over from Brooklyn. And if the car looks like a $200 shit box, or somebody's got an afro or a ponytail, they pull in behind the car, and they wait to see if the guy's going to go all polite in his driving, like put on lane change signals, and they know he's dirty. And, so worst comes to worst, it's fishing, really. It's a big fishing hole, Delancey Street. And so I spent all night in this bogus taxi with about, 850 pounds of white beef. And it's the end of the night. They made their collars, and there are two cops up front, and I'm sitting in the back. And when I ride with these guys, I don't really comment about what they do. I don't engage them, in any kind of debates. It's like I'm there to bear witness and then see what I can do with it, in my work. Anyways, they're riding up Essex Street. It's kind of Miller time, and as they're going up, they pass a black guy about 30 years old with dreads on a bicycle. And on the crossbars, he's got a white kid about 9, 10 years old. And the black guy and the white kid, they're kind of chatting. The kid's looking up at the guy. They look like they're sort of familiar with each other. And the cops drive by, and they're dead silent. After about a block, one guy says to the other, says, "Hey, big guy, does that look fishy to you?" He says, "It's fucking midnight. What's going on here?" He says, "Well, what do you want to do, big guy?" So I'll tell you, big guy. All right, make the light. Pull over. Let's see what's what. So they pull over. Bike's coming up Essex. They step. One of the cops steps in the road, puts his hand down, says, "Hey, how you doing? Get off the bike, please." And the black guy gets off the bike, and he goes, "Hey, officers," like it's an unexpected treat. "Hi, what's up?" And he says, "Do you ever hear of helmets?" "Oh, yeah, gee, I'm really sorry." At which point, the other cop says to the little white kid, says, "Hey, big guy, what's your name?" He goes, "Noah Rosenberg," like he's not sure. And he says, "Hey, Noah, come here, buddy. Come on over here." And he separates the two, and I'm sort of hopping in between the two conversations at this point. And the black guy tries to follow the white kid, and the other cop puts his hand on his chest, and he says, "No, you stay over here. Let me see some ID." He says, "What?" He says, "Some ID." He says, "Don't look at him. Look at me." He said, No, I was just picking him up from a play date." "Did I ask you that?" No, you don't understand. I worked the bar at Schiller's, and again, did I ask you that?" "Well, no." He said, "Why are you trying to divert me?" He says, "Go down the same road as me." He goes, Okay. And he gives him the ID, and at which point he sort of waves to the kid, and he goes, "Oh, what did I just say to you?" He says, No, I'm really sorry. It's Noah. He's kind of wound a little tight. And he says, "Oh, really?" He says, "Have a seat." He points to the curb, and he makes the guy sit on the curb with his feet in the gutter. And he says, "So where are you going?" He says, "Well, I had the late shift." And he says, "It's kind of late to be driving around with a kid on a bike, isn't it?" At which point I leave those two, and I go over to Noah and the other cop. And he says, "So, your name's Noah, huh?" And the kid says, "Yes, and for the millionth time, I don't have an arc." And the cop says, "Well, you must get that a lot." The kid says, "Oh, my God, you have no idea." And he says, "So, Noah, how old are you?" He says, "Well, next week I'll be a decade old." I said, Well, that's great. And where do you live? He says, 333 Avenue B. He says, and you go to school around here? He says, yes, I go to the Earth School. And he says, oh, cool. And who do you live with? He says, I live with my mom. And she goes, and who's that over there? And he says, well, I don't know who your friend is, but my friend is Cleve. And he says, oh, do you know what Cleve's last name is? He says, yeah, Carter. Cleve Carter. Sometimes I call him Coca-Cola. Sometimes I call him Carbon Copy. He says, oh, do you know him for long? I said, well, yeah, like 1.25 years. He's kind of like my godfather since my other godfather died. Oh, and what do you guys do? Well, he was taking me home from a play date to my mom. He says, so he knows your mom? And he says, well, yeah, he and my mom are kind of like friends. He says, well kind of like? He says, well, they have like sleepover dates. And he says, so your mom knows that you're with him now? She says, well, my mom sent him to pick me up. My dad lives in Woodstock. I says, okay, at which point I'm going, okay, let's see what's happening with Cleve. I walk over there. Cleve's sitting on the curb, and he's got his feet out there, and he's trying to make it look like it's natural. So he's like massaging his like deep thigh muscles, like he's limbering up for the marathon or something. This is humiliating as shit. And he's kind of smiling because you can't win. You gotta like play through, And he's sitting there, and the other cop is hitting his driver's license with a mag light, one of those big, powerful flashlights, and he goes, "So Cleveland, I see you're from Ohio," and he says. He says, yeah. He says, Cleveland from Ohio. He says, well, actually, it's from Oxford. And the guy goes, oh, Miami College. And he goes, yeah, that's where I went. And the cop goes, oh, Wally Zerbiak, who is this big basketball player. And he goes, well, yeah, Wally was a little before my time. So, oh, did you play ball for them too? He said, well, not basketball, I played soccer. Said, oh, that's amazing, because I teach soccer. I coach soccer out on the island, in a kids' league. And he says, that's amazing. I keep waiting for that sport to blow up, but I don't think it's, And Cleveland's going, yeah, that's amazing. He's sitting, just wiping it. At which point, a Mustang comes by with 2 black guys in it, and up Essex, and the guy in the shotgun seat looks out the windows, and he sees Cleveland sitting on the curb, and he starts yelling out, homeboy to base, we got a black man down. I repeat, a black man down. And he's like laughing his ass off, and the Mustang floors it. And Cleveland's kind of squinting, and he's kind of looking the other way. He's just like mortified, And then hopping back to the other cop with the kid, he says, so Noah, does Cleveland live with you? He goes, no, Cleveland lives at 444 Avenue D. We live at 332 Avenue B. He says, well, yeah, you ever been over to his house? He says, only about 1 million times. And he says, mostly with your mom, I guess, huh? He says, and by myself? He said, oh, really? What do you do there? He says, well, sometimes we walk his dog. It's a Rhodesian Ridgeback named Mars. And one time he tried to teach me how to make scrambled eggs, but I don't really like his oven because you like to pilot match and it goes, and it scares me. And he says, one time, my mom had to go to court in Woodstock, and I stayed with Cleveland for 3 days. And he said, in court, huh? He said, yeah, 3 days? He said, yeah. He said, but mostly, I'd say 82.5% of the time we watch television. You and Cleveland. He said, yeah, me and Cleve. He goes, and the cop said to him, do you ever do anything else with him? And he goes, what do you mean? He goes, do you do anything else with him? And all of a sudden, the kid's eyes get really big and kind of like wet, like steel. And the kid starts kind of like breathing kind of heavy, and the cop starts shaking a little bit. And the cop says to him, he says, hey, Noah, look at this. And he pulls his jacket back, and he shows him his detective shield on his belt. He says, you know what that is? He says, yeah, it's a police badge. He says, you know what this means? He says, what? He says, that means you can tell me anything you want, and you'll be perfectly safe. Do you understand that? And the kid looks at him, and he goes, oh, my God, are you going to arrest him? And the cop, his heart's pumping Kool-Aid, and he starts moving over, and he says, why? And the kid goes, If you fucking assholes arrest him again one more time just because he's black and I'm not, I'm gonna kill myself. You came into my apartment and dragged him out because the crazy lady next door said he was a rapist. You put him in handcuffs when he came to pick me up at school. You pulled him away from me at the street fair and made me wait for my mom. I says, I swear to God, I'm gonna lose my mind. You know, and the cops go, whoa, easy, easy, easy. At which point, both cops are looking at each other like, well, what's going on? And all of a sudden, Cleveland sees the kid's losing it, and he goes, hey, Noah, buddy. And the cop goes, what did I just say to you? Stop talking to the kid. And at which point, Cleveland says, officer, you want to put this to rest? I tell you what, I'm reaching for my cell phone in here. He says, why don't you call the kid's mom and, you know, just see what's going on? He says, I'll call the kid's mom. He says, what's her name? She goes, Adina. And he calls across to the other cop. Get the kid's mother's name. And the kid, through sobs, is going, Adina. And Cleveland gives the cop the mother's number. The cop calls, and he says, hey, how you doing? This is Sergeant Daly from the 7th Precinct. Who am I speaking to? And she goes, oh, my God, Adina Rosenberg, what happened? He goes, no, nothing happened. I just need to know, do you know where your son is right now? At which point she freaks. She goes, where is he? What happened? He's supposed to be with Cleveland. He's supposed to be taking him home from a play date. What happened? What happened? What happened? Well, no, he's fine. Okay, at which point the kid goes, my mom says if I get any more nervous, I'm going to have to live with my father in Woodstock, you fuck. You know, and the cop's going, you know, and the cop's going, no, the kid's great. The kid's fine. You know, it's this, the only thing is like they were riding without helmets, you know, and it's a serious safety violation. It's just going, oh my God, oh Jesus. She says, no, okay, don't worry about it. All right, good night, have a good night, you know, and he hangs up. At which point they bring Cleveland and Noah together again, and they give him this half-ass lecture on bicycle safety. And he says, you know, I'm supposed to write you up, but, you know, I'm going to give you a pass this time. And, you know, Cleveland's still kind of smiling, but the smile doesn't go past here. You know, it never reaches his eyes. And he gets back on the bike, and the kid gets on the handlebars, and the kid's going through that, you know, post-crying jag, you know, shudder withdrawal, and Cleveland's kind of talk him down as he sort of pushes off, and they go disappear up Essex. And we get back in the police car, and I'm sitting in the back, and I'm not saying a fucking thing. And they go in dead silence for about 2 blocks, and one cop finally says to the other, he says, you know something, big guy? And the other guy says, what's that, big guy? He says, still feels fishy to me. And the other cop says, hey, we gave it a shot, man. That's all we can do. Thank you.
Richard Price. His latest novel is called Lazarus Man. The story was recorded by The Moth, which, of course, is a podcast with all kinds of stories like the one you just heard at themoth.org, or find it wherever you get your podcasts.